stuff.
I know.
If we fall
Some have ideas to share.
Yeah,
or
so at least we
they
could
hear
say,
ours.
well, yeah, but we already know. We already have this on the agenda.
Oh,
Everybody's
no, I
seen
work
this
at Blunt
supposedly.
over in.
Yeah, but I know like at least one of the citizens right here has an idea that's not on, that's not reflected on here.
Charter.
Because I would hope
So
that we
we
open
could
it up
run-
and say,
we could
any
both
citizen
do
out
that.
there,
Yes.
here's a website.
But
when I'm-
goes
I
with
can-
Well, I
it.
know
like a
that
thought.
last time
Just the
through,
charter by itself.
there was a
Yeah,
citizen's
I can send that
comment
out.
beforehand
Yeah.
and then a citizen's
I think
comment
that'd be
after
helpful.
Yeah.
the meeting.
Did that help?
I thought it did. I mean, but it's up to the, obviously up to the committee.
I just think there's a lot of good suggestions, but put too many on the thing, people are just going to go, no, 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 no. So we pick 4 or
Yeah.
5 that we want to attack that are substantive.
Actually, I
They've
didn't.
only got the most beautiful buildings out of all of us.
Josh first handed it. Otherwise, I'd not studied it because I don't want to be biased in my thought process.
Oh. Yeah, I just read through it tonight, and I'm just like, I agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't
Now they're all
think
in high
it's
school over at Sherwood
like
High.
drinking. Why would we even bother?
One
We
of the
already are
things we
drinking
love
Willamette
most
River.
when we first
Oh yeah, right.
Why bother? Why put it to this? That should go. We should recommend that. Let's do that next
I've been here
year
like
to
6
something and
months
say.
before late
Yeah, that's a done.
outside with the lights on. Have you seen it at night? It's like so cool. It looks like there's.
And there's a lot of ones
Totally
like
blew me away.
the
It's
council
like, how did I
wants
not
us
notice
to
that
say the
before?
charter overrides resolutions and ordinances. That's like saying the Constitution overrides statutes. Rules get their authority from the charter to set the council
Right.
rules.
But that's that's not been the I hear what you're saying.
All right, we're going to get started here. If everyone can take their seats, please. Since we don't have a chair yet, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Jen, can you please do roll call?
Brian Amer,
Here.
Mark Cottle,
Here.
Dave Grant,
Yep.
Steve Henderson, Lori Cole, Randy Midland,
Here.
Bernie
And Lori did say she's not going to be able to make it tonight. I believe Linda was planning on being here, so she may come in a little bit late. But in the meantime, the first order of business is to select a chair. The only caveat I have on that piece is that no one under the council rules is allowed to be chair of two different committees or boards or commissions at the same time. I believe Bernie Sims is currently chair of his Cultural Arts Commission, is that correct?
Right.
Yep. So you're the only person who's not eligible to be chair of this meeting, or this committee. Do we have any nominations or anyone interested in being the chair?
I'd like to make a nomination.
Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Mark Cottle to be the chair.
I mean, that's pretty cold of you not even being here to do that so I could look at you.
You can look me in the eye sometime in the future. I think your experience would be perfect to chair this committee.
I would agree with that, and I'd second that.
Any other nominations or self-nominations? All right. We got a motion and a second. All in favor of Mark Cottle as chair?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Mark, you are the chair. Congratulations. If you'd like, you can take over with the selection of vice chair, item 4 on the agenda.
Who wants to be vice chair? Anybody or anybody have any nominations? I nominate Dave Grant.
I'll do it. I'll nominate myself if somebody. If you
I'll
want to.
second it then. Anybody else want to do it? The pay's really good.
I know. See, and benefits.
I have a nomination and a second. Anybody have any discussions they'd like to engage in? All right, we'll move for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Approval of the agenda. Anybody have any problems with the agenda as it's been outlined? The one thing I'd like to, okay, so we got that in the new business. All right, so do I really need to approve the agenda since it's before us and no one's had any changes to it?
I don't think there's any reason we have to do a motion to approve the agenda. No.
So we go on to citizens' comments. Citizens' comments are going to be limited to 3 minutes unless the group, are we a board or a committee?
Or a committee, so it's 4 minutes.
Okay, so 4 minutes. Anybody that'd like to address us, I'd invite you to come up and sit here so we can talk to you. And
There's sign-up sheets in the back there to fill out.
we have sign-up sheets, and if you'll just give
Jen. Or give to me.
whomever,
Yep.
Jennifer, the sign-up sheet, and what? We do. Yes, but we do need you to fill it out so we have a record of who you are. And since you haven't signed it up, could you state your name, give us your address, and then we'll go from there.
I'm Bob Eddy, and I live at 17512 Southwest Fitch here in Sherwood. And I'll read my item. I've emailed a copy of it to one of the board members, so it's in a Word document. An item for consideration. Sherwood is a relatively new city in the 21st century. Citizen understanding of issues and involvement in the decision process has been encouraged. That's the way it's always been done. Does not have a long history of precedence here. With the advent of communication tools that have developed over the past couple of generations, information can be shared with citizens with both speed and ease. With an assumption that the opening statements are true, I'd like to request that the City Charter Committee look at a revision to include the following provisions. 1, recognition that all city assets belong to the citizens of the city. 2nd, recognition that these assets are deployed to provide support to the services provided to those citizens. 3rd, recognition that there are capital and maintenance costs as well as intrinsic values associated with each of the assets of the city. 4th, recognition that there are varying numbers of citizens who benefit from the services provided. 5th, recognition that the services provided can be through any mixture of city staff and/or contracted organizations. So, condensed, I'd like to see, if you will, the Josh wording, if you will, for this. Any decision to sell, dispose of, repurpose the service, or replace a services provider of an asset with an original cost of, you name the dollars, current value, you name the dollars, or an annual population of citizens served greater than X number, you name X, must be put to the citizens for approval through the ballot process.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do you think that's necessary?
The why? It's the best example.
That's a great example. Is it all right? Anybody have any problem with me just opening up?
Small group.
Yeah. So, but my concern is we have an urban renewal district out there that has assets, and they're gonna all exceed whatever dollar amount we have if we choose to sell them. I don't remember when it expires. When it expires in 2022? Yeah, so anytime we would utilize those assets to what we've already stated we want to, you're asking us to then go out to the citizens for a vote. And a lot of those negotiations will be behind closed doors because it's a sale of real property. For example, the Urban Renewal Board owns the Robin Hood Theater parking lot. So if a developer comes in and says, I want to buy it, and I'm going to do this, and we're going to do all these things, and there's trade-offs here and there, we'd have to put that to the citizens. So you're looking at a kind of a cumbersome process to getting that done.
For those, yes, but what I'm talking about is if the citizens have paid for a building, have paid for a park, okay?
I understand that.
And in turn, either with that purchase or afterwards, it is being used to provide services to the citizens. Okay, now that lot wouldn't fit either of those conditions, would it?
Well, it's providing parking services for the Old Town area. And I would guess that a lot of the Old Town merchants would suggest that it's an important asset to them. So that's my concern is that's pretty broad, but I sort of agree with you a little bit on an essential service like the Y, but I think we should discuss it as a group.
Yeah.
That's a good thing for us to talk about in the charter. Anybody else have any questions?
I tend to agree. I mean, that buying and selling of city assets happens so often that I think things would grind to a halt unless you put like a $10 million number on the threshold.
Yeah.
I think it's good to discuss.
Yeah. Okay.
We've gone through some criteria and come up with some reasonable criteria.
Right.
So Bob sent me that information, or sent me what he just read, and I'll send it to you to send out to the committee.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much, Bob.
Gotcha.
You've been here forever. I don't.
No, forever. Since 2010.
Okay. Any other citizens have anything they want to come up and share with us? No one? You don't get this enough, Sylvia? All right. We'll close citizen comments. So we're on to new business, and we have a review of the process. Bob, you've been on this committee before, haven't you?
I have.
If I could just ask you, what was the process they used last time? How many meetings did you have? Did you have certain ones that were just work sessions and other ones that you had the citizens come and talk to, and that's all you did, or how did you do that?
We had primarily work sessions. I think the timing went on far too long. Joe, you can jump in if you like. But I happened to go back. I ended up with a huge manual from the last meeting, and I pulled it out. And it went well over a year. And that's a long time to meet, and I really feel that the interest of the committee members waned.
You'll lose your chairman if we go a year.
I don't think any of us want to go on for over a year. But the way that it was done, and Pat Allen did a nice job as the chairperson of the last committee, we took certain sections of the charter and, let's say, 4 or 5 at each meeting, and went over them. Some were pretty cut and dry, and it took very little time to look at them and say, that's fine, nobody had any comments. Others took a lot of discussion and were carried over from one meeting to the next meeting. But I think that so basically what we did was go through, I'll say, the easier ones to discuss and resolve in a group, and then took the tough ones that were going to take a little longer and hash over those as a group. But if I were to have one last comment or one last suggestion, keep this a lot shorter than what we had before.
Oh, trust me.
That's why I think you'll make a great chairman.
Brevity is something I'm familiar with. Anybody else have any suggestions? I have a couple. Josh, I really like how you did this. I literally spent 45 minutes going through, crossing out stuff I didn't think was important enough. Here's my concern. If we have any more than, say, 4 or 5 changes, significant changes, I mean, changing a period or an of or an and or a preposition isn't significant. But if you have more than 3 or 4 of those, I'm fearful the voters will do what I often do when I just see them wanting to rewrite it by amendment, constant interlineation, which is just no. Come back to me with a whole new charter if you want to do that much. So one way we could do it is we could go around and prioritize the ones we think are the 5 best, and then Josh could correlate those and say, these are the 5 best that you've all done. These are what we're going to tackle first, and limit it to 4 or 5 meetings and say, if we get those done in one meeting, then we'll have some other time to maybe look at some others to see if they creep up the list. If not, we're just not interested in going down that road. Hey, Linda.
Hey, Mark.
Let the record show Linda.
I was thinking the same thing. As I recall, the one that I was involved with in the later term time that I was on council, there were like you said, 4 or 5 things that were important to everybody. And as I recall, the voters had to vote on all those individually. And I think that's really hard for voters to give them too much.
They don't see context. They don't see the whole charter when they just see the blurb.
Yeah.
So what do the rest of you think? We're just trying to figure out the best effective process. And I don't know if you heard the introduction to it, was that if we do more than 3, 4, or 5 substantive changes, it just overwhelms the voters too much. And so one way of doing this going forward is prioritize, all of us just take time and prioritize these and give Josh, these are what I think are the most important ones. He compiles them and says, everybody agrees these 4 or 5 are the most important. We discuss those over the 2 or 3 meetings. If we don't get to the rest of them, then they're just not important to us enough. Look to Josh to see if he says, this one's really important. We really need to look at this one. That that'd be an added to. And then maybe some of the other ones we can, there's a lot of these, in my opinion, we can go through in 2 minutes just going, no, we're not going to define the word reasonable. Reasonable is a definition of a term. We're not going to say that charter takes precedence over ordinances or anything else or council rules, because by definition, you can't have council rules or ordinances without the charter. And so some of those are easy to go through. So is that how you guys would like to progress?
Are we going to do that again? Are we going to have every change we want be an individual ballot measure? It has to be that way?
I think so.
It doesn't have to be that way. The problem that I've run into if you don't do it that way is that if the voters vote no,
because somebody's mad about
if you don't like one thing, you vote the whole thing down.
Okay.
One thing to consider too is to do, like you say, 3, 4, 5 substantive measures, and then 1 housekeeping measure.
Right, and then we can put the housekeeping measure all as one thing.
Right, 1 housekeeping measure to clean up all the small stuff. Yeah.
How does
That's what we did last time.
How does these dates, how does that play into?
I think that's the next part of this
process?
discussion.
That's the next part of the discussion.
So I've handed out to everybody a estimate of election costs and dates, so you can talk a little bit about what timeline you want to look at. So the committee has been charged by the City Council with getting something on the ballot no later than 2020. So there are a number of other elections that aren't even listed on here, but I listed the 4 major elections between now and then. And then the estimated election cost from the City Recorder's Office, if we put it on that ballot, And then working backwards from that last deadline there, which is when we have to have everything filed for with the elections office, previous to that being the last city council meeting where the council could refer that to the elections office.
Okay.
And then an estimated deadline. This is just an estimate for when to present to city council in order for them to be able to act on it by that date, in case they have any changes they want to make, refer something back to the committee, drafting of the ballot title, that sort of thing, and then the packet deadline for that council meeting. So that first deadline after the costs would be when this committee would have to have your entire process completed by. So May 21st, 2019 looks challenging. But the rest would all be feasible, I think.
So I always like the number 0 to something like this. My concern is we could do this. I mean, this never happens in government. No offense, Joe. That we could do all this work, and then the new council gets in and says, we want to redo all this, and then it's strung out again. That's just my only concern with moving it down the 2020 road. But that's not our problem. That's somebody else's problem. Anybody have any any concerns about anything? It doesn't mean we have to meet until 2020. It just means we can get our job done and send it to them.
Yeah. I guess that's what I was asking about the dates.
You can
Does
certainly
that
do something.
influence our meeting?
Yeah, you can certainly complete your work well in advance of any of these deadlines.
Yeah.
Refer it to council. Council can even act on it well in advance and just put it on the ballot, 4 months before that deadline.
Unless staff or the council tells us there's an emergency to do it sooner, I would suggest we go with the soonest one that's 0 for cost. 18,000 just seems to be.
If there are other things that are going to happen on an election November 5th of next year, does that then change that number from 18?
My understanding is that would then reduce the cost, right?
But there'd still be a cost.
There's still a cost, yeah.
Kind of split between this and that.
Well, if we can get.
Well, we share the cost of the ballot, whether we have something on it or not,
Right.
amongst the jurisdictions. But if you have,
We don't pay for it if we don't have anything on the ballot. The people who put something on the ballot pay for it, or the entities that put something on the
Right.
ballot pay for it.
right, but it's we don't bear the whole cost of something that comes on the ballot just for Sherwood, because they're mailing out a ballot anyway, right?
If they're mailing out a ballot just for Sherwood, which they potentially
Right.
would be,
Which is why you don't want to do it not in a general election.
right,
Well,
exactly.
Can I make a suggestion then? I think what we do is let's try to get our work done so we can qualify for the May 24 or the November 5th, 2019. And if we can, we leave it up to the council whether to push it out, depending on what the projected cost would be. Does that sound fair to you, council members? Does everybody else? have a
Sounds good to
problem
me.
with that?
Yeah.
The advantage of a somewhat graduated approach, unlike the last charter amendment vote that happened with no public comment and no charter review committee, is 90% of it failed. The two previous votes, we had 12 total, but we split them up over 2 elections, giving us time, I was a council liaison, not a voting member, but giving the committee time to review it, giving them time to meet with the public, and giving us time to have public meetings. And we broke it into groups so that it wasn't overwhelming.
Okay.
And every single measure passed. So
So let's do that. Let's say we're targeting the November 5th, 2019 ballot, and we'll leave it up to the council to determine whether it goes on that or a future ballot, depending on their wise decision making and spending city's money. That would be you. I just like looking at the council. Does anybody else have any, as to timing, is that good for everybody? Anybody have any heartburn over that? I don't see any.
So, Mark, the packet deadline then for the city, the first time I go to the city council would be May 24th.
Yeah, so I'm just telling you our packet deadline, we're going to meet that by a long shot. Okay? I'm not anticipating stretching this out over a whole long time. I keep forgetting, Nancy, do you have any, I don't see your head nodding, so do you have any issues with what we've been discussing?
No, if I had issues, I'd unmute and tell you. Everything sounds very workable.
Okay. So let's set that as our goal, the November 5th, 2019. with a caveat that we'll leave it to the council as to when they would like to send it out. And letting them know that our discussion is we don't see, unless we say something's pressing, we don't see anything pressing to spend a bunch of money unnecessarily. Is that fair? Okay. So next steps and schedule future meetings. So I think the next step is for Josh, if you could give us a methodology of how you like to receive our votes on these. And I don't know if you just want to add a column to this and we can just rank I don't know if should we just rank them or should we just put a star by 5 of them and you can say these 5 got the most stars, or how would you like to receive that?
Well, whatever is the easiest for you is fine by me. If you want to just send me the section number and the item number, or you want to put a star by it, whatever, we'll compile it.
I don't think we need to rank them if we just want to put stars by 5. Is that good for everybody? 5? And we'll see what he comes out with.
Is that by chapter or section?
Section. So, for example, if I thought boundaries was an important one, I'd put a little star by that one. Okay, we'll do that, and then anybody
Are we going to limit that to 5?
Yeah. Okay. We're just going to limit it to 5, and hopefully
5th will be a housekeeping measure.
I'm including the housekeeping member outside of that 5.
Oh,
I'm going to let our city attorney tell us, I think these are housekeeping measures we really should get done anyway, and he can combine them all, and hopefully they're one of those things like, yep, we should have had a period there. We should have done it this way. We should have said that. Is that fair, Josh?
That works for me. Yep.
And then our next meeting would be to start the discussion on the 5, and see how fast we can parse that down to an agreeable changes, or just saying we strike this one, we strike that one, and move forward that way. And so what I'd like to do is, can everybody do that in the next 7 days? And then most of us have other boards and commissions that we're all part of, except for Lazy Dave. And figure out a date sometime in November that we can get together. I mean, November, December we can get together because the end of November is going to be pretty hard, and anything past probably the 14th or 15th of December is going to be pretty tough. So one more meeting this year, and then we can just sort of take it as is, see how fast we get through it or how slow we get through it, and then set further meetings. Is that fair to everybody?
Do people have their calendars available so we could try to figure something out while we're all sitting around a table instead of trying to do a doodle poll? And yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. How do you want to handle the citizen comment?
So no, I totally agree. And so until we get those 5, and I would invite the city to put it out to the citizens saying, we're reviewing things. You've got a week before our next meeting to get us your comments on anything that you guys think is important. I mean, do that by email blast or on the city website. And then at the next meeting, I would schedule citizens' comments. I would probably schedule them. I would probably limit it to. I want to have as much citizen input as possible, and I think it's helpful for once they see our 5 for them to make comment, and then after they hear our dialogue for some people to make comment. But I don't want to hear from the same people twice just because they can. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't know what the 5 are going to be, and I don't know what people's heartburn is going to be over those 5. And I don't want us sitting here listening to the same people speak to us twice.
So the last time we did the Charter Review Committee, we had maybe 5 people comment.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's going to be a huge issue unless we're going to put something on the ballot like we're going to license cats. I don't think that's going to happen.
So you're wanting citizen comment before and after new business? Is that the idea?
No, let's just put citizens' comments, and we may adjust it once we start our discussion. I mean, a citizen may come before you and give you things saying, hey, I got a really great suggestion, and we'd listen to that first. But if they just want to comment on the 5, I would prefer them to listen to what we have to say. Well, maybe we want them to hear what they have to say before let's have the citizens' comment just like we had it.
So my thought would be, we have here a list of possible issues for you to consider that have been identified by staff or council.
Right.
It's possible some of you may have issues that aren't even on this list. One was raised this evening by a citizen. And we may also get some from other citizens through this outreach process. So I'll compile all that information,
Let's meet the
bring
first
that
week
back
of
at the next
December.
meeting, and you can
Yeah.
decide what your 5 are.
First or second week in December then. Because you're going to have to get it out to the citizen, we're going to have time, and then we're going to have to see what everybody else wants to see if it raises up to the level of what we want to hear.
Right.
Because you can compile the list, the 5 pretty easy once we get it, right?
I guess what I'm thinking is there may be new issues that are raised that you may want to discuss. Which one are going to be your 5?
That's what
So I can compile what your top 5 are for each of you, but then we also may have new issues that come to light. So that may be what you do
How
at
do
your
you guys
next
wanna do
meeting
that?
is
New
determining.
issues come to us, and it's the first agendized item at the next meeting saying, you guys all saw there's these 15 other new issues.
Let's narrow it down to 5.
Does anybody want to include those in your top 5? Is that how you want to do it?
That makes sense.
Okay. So you're clear on how we're going to do it?
I think so.
You're going to get it out to the citizens. They can make comments. You're going to compile their list of changes. You're going to get it to us. So when we come at our next meeting, you'll know what our 5 issues are going to be and whether or not we want to include any of the citizen comments into our 5 issues.
So that will be the first item of discussion is
Yeah.
fixing what those 5 are.
Right.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll have citizens' comments.
So do we include the citizens' comments? Does that push our 5 or our 7-day due date back for our start comments?
So let's get, if you can, in the next 2 weeks, get your 5 in, because he's going to send us out a new one of these checklists, and he's going to add that one citizens to it. You know, how do we want to preserve certain assets in the charter? And I think that's all that, I mean, that's enough to tell you what we're going to be talking about, right? And then after we get that back from him, within 2 weeks, so essentially before the 14th, we get to him what our 5 are. By the end of the month, he will have whatever any citizen wants, and then he will get us out those, and then we'll meet, discuss. The first item is look at the citizens' 5, see if anybody wants to really add them to our 5, and then have citizens' comments, and then start down the trail of going through the top 5 issues. So I'm not advocating for 10, I'm only advocating for 5, right? I'm only advocating for 5.
I think Joe Gall may have had a comment he wanted to inject.
I just wanted, this is in general for this room, if you're going to use this room, the best night usually during the week is Thursday night. Just because other boards have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night.
So we don't get off our other boards' meetings if we're on this one?
Like December 6th, Chair, you said the first week in December. December 6th is a Thursday night. That might be the best night to schedule your next meeting.
Okay.
If there's something in here that I'm not aware of, we'll deal with that. Usually Thursday nights.
Good.
Jen can check the calendar as well to make sure there's no conflict, if the 6th works for everybody else.
Anybody have heartburns with the 6th? Is that going to give us enough time to get it out to the citizens, to give us comments, and to get that stuff back?
Yes.
Okay.
6 o'clock start time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark, let me get this straight. We turn our 5 top ones in, and then Josh, staff, et cetera, is going to compile those
Right.
and come out with a final 5.
Right.
If one of the 5 that we turned in is not a composite of the 5, then do we have to go, and we feel really strongly about that, then do we have to go back and put our comments in when the citizens do? When are we going to look at that?
Well, and there's also a very real possibility that we'll have some ties, right? And there may not be a clear 5. So what I'm going to come back to you with at the next meeting is kind of a compilation of what the issues are that have been identified as a top 5 by various members of the committee, other ones that have been raised by the citizens, and then you can discuss and determine how you want to pick your top 5 based on
What
that.
we'll do is after citizens' comments, we'll have committee comments. And if you want to take 2 minutes and try to persuade us to move yours up, I'll give everybody 2 minutes to try to do that. Is that fair? I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem. I'm hoping it's not that much. If it is, this
Hopefully
is kind
not.
of fluid, and we can always go to 6 or 7 or 8 meetings.
Might I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Too? Josh, when you compiled that list, I don't think you were thinking of it in terms of top 5. And I think as I look through that list, there's probably things that we consolidated into one item.
Well, he's going to put together, I don't want to say non-substantive, but housekeeping ones. It's a separate one from the 5.
But even outside of housekeeping items, there's like I can think of several in there where you could. It's probably one item that would.
Like page 2, chapter 3, council, section 7. Is that what you're referring to, Tim?
Not looking at it, but.
I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 suggestions on there.
Oh, right.
Right, so that might just be one item, and I was suggesting maybe, Josh, when you compile the list.
I will make an effort to consolidate.
Well, so just so you're all clear, I'm looking at this as this, we want to talk about chapter 3 versus any particular section of it. We want to talk, because chapter 3 is not very long.
Or you mean section 7? Section 7.
Don't look at the comments as it. Look at the chapter heading as your top 5.
The section heading.
The section heading. We want to look at this section, and there may be more comments or less comments on that section. Is that fair to everyone?
Yeah, but I think in this meeting, we'll have opportunity to say, this part of that I don't like, or whatever.
Right. That's exactly right. Just because it makes our top 5 doesn't mean we're going to move it around and change everything and do other language, right?
And you want this to Josh by the 14th.
By the 14th. Just pick your top 5.
I'll do my best. I leave for Columbia on the 7th, so.
You have a long plane. Well, it's a long plane ride.
Plane ride.
Plane ride work.
I'll get it to you before.
And will you send us out a new one of these so we can just.
And I'll add Bob's recommended. Yep.
And just condense it into assets of the city.
You could do another doodle poll. I know how much you like them.
Does anybody have any other items?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, since I was tardy, so is the thought process that we have more than one election, and this is our first pass?
It could be.
I mean, we've got multiple dates.
Well, what we agreed to do is we're not going to try to make the first date.
Right.
So we're going to try to get this all done well before May 24th, 2019. But how we refer it to the council, we could say we strongly encourage these 3 to be put on that next one, and these other ones we would encourage to be separated and put on
A later date.
A later date. We don't want to overwhelm the citizens.
Okay.
We may come up with 6 or 7 that we think really need to be changed. But I really think we should keep it down to 3 or 4 so we don't overwhelm the citizens. That's just my take. Let's see. Anybody has any other items they want to chat about?
How are we going to, and how are we already communicating this process to the citizens in order to attract invites or attract comments and whatnot?
So,
Besides what you mentioned,
yeah,
but-
based on the chair's suggestion, we'll do some sort of public outreach website, social media, something like that, regarding soliciting comments. We'll also make sure they're aware of the process and when the next meeting is.
And publish what the council's and the staff's comments are already there so they can see that.
Councilor Rosner can certainly bring it up at every council meeting, the committee's meeting, and that.
As well as
That-
Council Browse.
In fact, I would suggest to you, all of us on our different boards, every time when we meet, we should say, if anybody's got any comments, now's the time to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Part of that outreach actually a hard copy mailing, or you can try to do all of it
Digitally.
how you reach them.
Well, the Archer comes out. There could be an article in the Archer,
That's a good idea.
or you can
With
have,
a
you can,
web page that they can go to and look at.
or the Gazette comes out once a month, and
It's already.
she can do a article on it.
The problem is for November's already, that time's up, and so by the time the Gazette comes out the second time, we'll be meeting.
She could probably get something in that we're meeting, that the process is starting, because
We'll reach
November
out
and
anyway.
December is a combined Gazette.
So that was, I think you were bringing that up because that was one of the things that the council tasked this committee with was citizen outreach and education about what this process is and the importance of a charter, all that. So this is an important
The Archer
discussion.
is covered because it just so happens in my counselor corner in the Archer, I talked about this.
Great.
People getting involved, so.
Great.
You know, I would guess that because we have a long timeline, that we may have our last meeting, say, in January, whether we have 1 or 2 meetings in January, and then say, all right, we're going to have another meeting at the beginning of March. So we have plenty of community involvement, and we'll have an open house, and they can come and chat with us about it if they want, about why we chose these 5 or whatever. But, you know, the more citizens involved, the better off it is. And we can do something along those lines if we find it needful. The tough part for me, I've been involved with the government of the city for a lot of years, is no matter how much outreach we do, somebody will always come up to me and says, how come you never tell us anything? And I always say, how come you never read what the city sends to you? I mean, at the end of the day, it's been in the Archer 6 times. We had 3 open houses, and at every planning commission, arts commission, library commission, parks commission, it was announced, and yet we had no one show up. How is that possible? So, but we do have a duty to our citizens to get them as involved as they wish to be.
Mark, I think we had this conversation the first day I was on council, like 16 years ago or something like that.
You never give us anything.
That was probably me.
Is there any other information that you would like that would help you in this process from me or from anybody else?
The only other thing I can think of is, from your point of view, I mean, I don't want to put you in a bad spot either, but there's some of these things that, with all due respect to non-attorneys, don't make sense, legally make sense. And so it may be nice for the council members to realize they don't make legal sense. It's almost impossible to define the word reasonable. I mean, there's case law on case law on case law defining what is reasonable. I mean, you may disagree.
That's why we use the word reasonable.
That's why we use the word reasonable.
Right, because it's impossible to define.
And so I guess what I would say, if you have questions of whether it's that important or not, just talk to Josh and he can give you a legal opinion. Look at that's redundant at best if we do something.
Yeah.
Like that. Is that fair to you?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't have anything else. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to
I guess
discuss?
if we have any questions while we're going through our own processing and evaluation of this stuff, we just have questions about what's here, we run that by Josh.
Feel free to reach out. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
You can talk between two people, but any more than that may cause some problems.
Yeah, not a quorum and not a serial meeting of a quorum either. Right.
Or, right.
Right.
Yeah, and I would recommend that all of you are on the city's website email, right? Except for Dave and Linda. The rest of you all have city email
No,
addresses.
just planning commission and city councilors. Yeah.
Just be aware that your emails are subject to public disclosure if somebody wants to challenge this, and you will have to divulge your whole email. So if you want to email other people, create a free email account with somebody and do it that way so you can say, here it all is. Because they did that to the mayor of Beaverton, and he had to turn over 2 computers. Nike sued him. And he had to turn over 2 computers with all his personal emails on it because he was conducting business. That's my only.
If you do decide to create a separate, like, yourname.sherwood@gmail.com or whatever for this purpose, just let me know and we'll change the email distribution list.
Does the council liaison have anything you want to report to us? I don't know which of you two are primary.
I'm primary. Yeah. We have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission coming up next week. I can tell you're very excited about that. We have some more joint meetings coming up so that we will have met with all the boards and commissions by the end of the year, which is one of the goals that Mayor Mays had in place. And then we have 2 potential ordinances that we're looking at. One is the transient lodging tax, and then we'll be discussing a possible truck route. There's been some complaints about the trucks going up and down some of the roads, so it'll be an interesting conversation coming up.
We actually did that once, where we kept trucks out of Old Town. They couldn't come through Old Town unless they come to Old, unless it was business in Old Town, they had to go around Old Town.
Oh, yeah.
Was that?
I think so.
We don't have any ordinance on the books currently.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to add, Tim?
So there's an old ordinance on truck routes for the Old Town area, anyway, if you wanted to get some of the history.
It's not currently effective, but maybe it was there at some point.
All right. Unless
Question.
somebody has, go ahead.
I would be curious, you have counterparts in other cities and communities and municipalities. If anybody is doing a charter review or has done recently what amendments they made. I don't want you to spend a lot of time researching it. I can do that, but
We can do that, yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, what are the other hot buttons that are coming down the road that it's just hasn't come to Sherwood?
I know there's some social media
Ban it?
things that have happened that cities are trying to take a
term limits
look
have been
at.
an issue recently and things like
Right.
that, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
If there's stuff that you think are so important that just really have to be done, you might as well let us know. I mean,
Yeah, so if things that I think are really critical don't make your 5, you'll hear from me.
you can read through this and you can tell there's some stuff that you're pretty sure we ought to.
Yeah.
And so let us know, or else we're just going to be scratching our head on whether it's one of our 5, you know.
Right.
That's pretty valuable. I think it's 5.
Yeah, when you send this back out, highlight a couple of the ones that you think the city needs to, this is an issue that the city needs to do. And we may say, great, we'll put that off by itself, and we're going to still look at our 5.
Yeah, and just to strengthen the participation of what the council's comments already bring to some of those topics.
So I do have one other question. In light of Mr. Eddy's request, Josh, will you be adding that to this piece?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he's just going to add it as city assets, how to dispose of them.
Something broad like that, right.
I just want to make sure that was going to be.
Yes, that'll be on the list, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody? I hate to send you home so early. It's less than an hour. All right, we're adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.